So, welcome everybody to this webinar about the move to the query builder. The main purpose is to help understand what will happen if you switch from the old version of sending mailings to the new version of sending mailings, but we'll also jump into the query builder and where the data comes from. So it will also be useful if you don't use the Peppered system for mailings. And as mentioned before the recording started, we'll do this all in English, but we may switch to Dutch occasionally and try to subtitle that afterwards. And feel free to add anything in the comments. So to jump in, today's agenda, query builder for mailings, main topic, the database. We're also going to show the query builder itself. We got permission from Isla Theater to use their database. Obviously, we're not going to go into personal details, but I'm going to show you the how to operate the query builder, or maybe there's some questions about it. And this webinar was also done somewhere in May, where it was a sneak peek next release, but it's actually now released. And that's the archive function that's going to be very useful for cleaning up. Definitely a missing feature. We hope that when everybody has moved over to using the query builder for mailings, we have all of our Peppered users on the new system, and that will then help getting more feedback and ideas. What will be the next steps? How can we make it better, easier, etc. So don't see this as a finished end product, as nothing is. It's just a nice starting point that we're all going to use the query builder for mailings. Hopefully, be able to do more and easier, and from there build and improve. So what does that mean exactly, using query builder for mailings? To jump in straight away, this is the old way of sending mailings. So this is what some of you still use today. It's a 3 steps, and there were multiple problems with this, or things we wanted to improve. First of all, you didn't get clear feedback. How many people are you actually going to email to? Not in an easy, visible way. And we did have some issues in the past that people accidentally email their entire database. That's not what we want, obviously. Also, it was a bit confusing for some how to combine database and filters and how that ties into the GDPR, the AVG in Dutch. And basically, everything is better and nicer in new versions. That's why we build new versions, until we get feedback that we need to further improve something, obviously. This will be the new way it will look. So much simpler, no more 3 steps, only 2 steps. Schedule the when you want it sent. And the second step is just select your query. That's it. And it will give you real-time feedback how many people it will, or visitors will, expect to send the mailing to, because that query is run live at the moment of selecting, and another time live in the moment of sending. It may differ, because if there's more visitors that fall into your query or less, it will be updated, and it will be the query that's going to execute at the moment of sending. This also means you could save a certain query. For instance, this example says nieuwsbrief abonnees, or in English, newsletter subscribers. And it could be a fixed query. It could be a complex query of sorts. We're going to look at that later. And you can just keep the same query every single time. You don't need to rethink about who do I want to add, what mailing is, what do I want to subtract. You just select your query and you send it. So if it was only about how does it work to send, this will be a very short webinar, because this is basically already it. But let's go a bit more in depth of what that means exactly. So again, the new version, and here's the old version, how that worked. So if we look at the why and what happens exactly when you switch over. First of all, there's now a split between creating and using queries for mailings, and that's a good thing, because you don't want to have to think about who you want to send to exactly every single time. You may have a certain amount, could be 10, could be 20, could be 2 queries that you use regularly to send out a mailing, and that's a combination probably of the GDPR opt-in, maybe visitor tags, maybe historical ticket purchases, or maybe mailing lists. That's still possible. That's something you set up once or look at from time to time, but when you're actually sending the mailing, you just select the query. You don't have to think about it. So that saves a lot of thinking and headaches, and hopefully also a lot of fear of accidentally sending that big database. And if you select the wrong query, then it will say, oh, you're going to send to 200,000 people. That hopefully will spark the insight of maybe I don't want to do that if I just want to send an update about an event, for example. So I think that's quite useful. So the saving and reusing of queries, you can always check the detailed overview of visitors. So if you wonder who is in that query, you don't only have to use it for mailings. You can also just look at to get some insight in your database or look at some visitors. And again, just one step, so can be easier than one step. That's hopefully a nice improvement. And good to know, because there was some misconceptions about this. The query builder will work with all templates. So also if you still use the pre-V4 mailing templates, you can also use the query builder. But obviously it also works with the V4 query builder. So that's the part of sending. It's not only about the sending what has changed, also the report after sending will look much different. Let me jump into it straight away. It's more visual. It gives you a better overview. So this is the report you get after you've sent a mail. So it's sent out, you can check back in and you can see the report. So in this example, it says it was sent to 22,500 visitors out of the 130,000 in this database. A nice percentage. Obviously in the middle part, it gives you the how many people have opened it, how many have clicked on a link, and then the three rates that help you compare mailings with each other. So it's always good to not only look at these statistics in isolation for one mailing, it's always good to look at comparison with other mailings you've sent. And that's the best way to see if your mailing is performing better or worse or good or bad, so to say. On the bottom, there's the bounces, so how many bounces are there, but also the unsubscribed, the changed preferences, and the viewed online version. Which is what is also a recent change is the list and subscribe. There was a previous webinar. You can also look that back if you want to know more and haven't seen that one. Is the list and subscribe we added basically because Google and Yahoo are enforcing this now, and it's maybe in a way a good thing. It will allow people to easily unsubscribe without having to go to the website or fill out any form. It's just one click, unsubscribe, and those are things you also want to be aware of how many people actually do that. So this is the overview you will get after sending. The query builder using query formatting will be enabled for everyone in I think the next release or the release after, so very soon. If you want to use it earlier, I think it's only reasons to do so and not a lot of reasons to not do so. It's quite easy. You just go to your system control panel, manual mailings, and then you flick the switch of use query builder for mailings. There's one warning, however, there is no way back. So as soon as you started using query builder for mailings, you cannot go back to the old version, because that has to do with the reporting and some changes in the database that will happen when you flick the switch. So if you really want to test or try out something in the old version before moving to the new one, wait a little bit. But again, honestly, in my opinion, there's not many reasons to do so. Everything you can do in the old version, you can also do in the new version. It's just easier and you have a bit more possibilities there. So you cannot do this, can wait, and then will automatically happen for you as soon as in a future release. Or again, if you're ready, just jump into the control panel and enable it, and it will just work. I've built in some questions slide if there's maybe any questions in the meantime. So feel free again to just pop something in the messages and we can go into them. And Kelly, Liam, and Celine can even ask them. If not, we'll just continue on to the more technical part of this webinar. So now it will become a little bit more complicated because what is exactly in those query builder? What is it? What is the source of that query builder? And that's actually a combination of many sources, which makes it so powerful so to use. So in no particular order per se, but a big part is obviously all historical ticketing data for events in the Pepper database. It's quite a sentence there. What it means is that in your Pepper database, it will first see what events, what shows, what performances are in there. For all of those performances that are known to Pepper, it will connect to your ticketing system. This works with all the ticketing systems these days, and it will get all historical ticketing data. Depending on the ticketing system, this can happen multiple times a day. There's a few out there that don't allow the regular updates, and then it's a nightly update. But even the slowest ticketing systems on this regard will be updated daily in Peppered with everybody that bought a ticket. If it's online or offline, doesn't matter. It will all be in there, limited to the events known to Peppered. The second thing, which is also important, it's not only about the ticketing data, so who bought what ticket, it's also about the visitor data. So even if somebody's never been online, never been on the website, but have bought a ticket on the box office or on the phone or whoever, it will also be loaded into the Pepper database, connected to the ticket spot for the events known to Pepper. A recently new thing is that we now fully sync visitor tags. We already synced visitor tags, but that was always limited to people that bought a ticket. But we will now also sync visitor tags and change to visitor tags, even if somebody didn't buy a ticket because you, for some reason, handed out a visitor tag in your ticketing system. So depending on the ticketing system that was launched in version 194 or 195. Specifically for Tixley, there's a opt-in sync also available. I won't go into that, but Tixley customers can reach out to the customer success manager if they want to know more about that. So that's all syncing of information in your ticketing system to Peppered. Obviously, it's already there connected to available information about your events that may come from a planning system or also may come from a ticketing system or you entered manually. That's a combination that obviously makes a lot of sense. But what's also in there is a very interesting, what we call online activities. So that's a separate database kept in the Peppered, basically tracking if somebody visits the website, if somebody opens a production page, if somebody adds something to the shopping cart, if someone adds something to the wish list. All of that is tracked in what we call an activities database and also connected to the same visitors from before. Not all of those, not everything in the database is available in the query builder yet, but we do plan to launch new filters and edit filters based on ideas and also try to give priority of what's most needed, so you can get more and more info on the combination of activities and ticketing database. We'll show some examples later in the query builder bit. So this also includes things like time slots, which we will hopefully be able to push to more venues to use next on-sale season, because it just works so well, but also gives a lot of interesting marketing insights. I'll come back to that later. And obviously, not very important, the opt-ins. So basically the GDPR basis, the AVG basis of who you are sending your mailings to. It's extra important to use these opt-ins with the new list and subscribe also, because if somebody automatically unsubscribes from a mailing, our system needs to understand, so what opt-in was used, so where to unsubscribe from, because you don't want to blindly unsubscribe people from everything if they can only be unsubscribed for specifically the newsletter or specifically pre or after service mailings. That's why we also advise to maybe don't ask for the opt-in for a service mailing when buying a ticket, but do offer the possibility of unsubscribing for it, because that will prevent people from unsubscribing from everything. Important to know, there's a lot of databases, a lot of syncing going on, a lot of information going back and forth. In Peppered, there will always be automatic deduplication. So there won't be two visitors with the same email address in the database ever. It will always be deduplicated, brought into one visitor only. Then there's the when synced, obviously, question. I asked it a little bit for some ticketing systems. If anything happens on the website, so if somebody buys a ticket on your website, doesn't go out to a separate web shop or separate ticketing system. Again, depends on your ticketing system and your setup, but if it happens on Peppered on your website, the sync is real time. So any ticket bought or any personal information changed or any opt-in ticked, it will be available to the query builder, and when sending queries real time. A second moment when data is synced is as soon as somebody starts a session. And starting a session can mean logging in, creating an account, but it can also mean coming back to the website after a month or a month or two, three, whatever, and you were previously logged in because you already bought a ticket in the past. At the moment you start your session, at the moment you log into the website, it will again also actively sync to make sure that if there's any change in the recent few hours on your profile, it will also be added to the profile of that visitor. So that's another syncing time. And then lastly, mentioned that on this previous slide already, depending on the ticketing system, the full sync, so everything that happens outside of the website, so to say, will be synced at least once a night. But for most ticketing systems, actually several times during the day. So you can trust that the data that you're using in your query builder will be as good as real-time information that you can always use and trust on. And again, the execution of the query will actually happen every time you at the moment of sending the email. So it's not about when you created the email. If something happens after, it will also be included. That's the database behind it. If there's still no questions, I'll move on to the next bit. Query builder. And some, I guess, important information there. Why we feel the query builder is also very good and important to use is, again, for GDPR, for AVG, because by that law, you also need to be very careful with any privacy sensitive data, with any personal data. So we wanted also ways to prevent that you need to do an export import, essentially exporting sensitive data to your computer or storing it on your computer. You don't want that. Ideally, it's much better if we just eliminate the need for exports and imports. So that's also a secondary goal of using the query builder for mailings. So you don't need to do that anymore. If you still feel like you need to do it for, I don't know, maybe there's a specific filter in your ticketing system or CRM system that's not available in Peppered, you need to export import. Try to prevent, to save, or immediately delete sensitive data on personal devices, because that's a risk in itself that you ideally do not want to have too long time. Another important point, obviously, is the combining of data in one query. We also mentioned that before. And maybe nice to know, one of the newest filters was the purchase genres and text, but we'll jump into that into the example. Some other things I did want to iterate is that it's important to send less unwanted emails, but we can send more wanted emails. What I mean by that is that the same reason why we've added the list and subscribe possibility in mailings is also that the email providers like Google and Yahoo, but others as well, Microsoft also, is becoming more and more strict on the amount of unwanted emails you send. And unwanted is defined here as sending an email to an email account that doesn't exist anymore, or sending an email to an account that does exist, but the recipient hits spam on that email. If you cross, there's a bit of a magic number of 0.3%. If 0.3% of your email or more is unwanted, according to the definition I just gave, that's too many. And if you keep doing that for too many times, it will result in a potential block or blacklist, or it will at the very least lower your chances of an email actually reaching the inbox of people, and that's obviously not something you want. So that's why we have a lot of different technologies and systems in place to try to prevent that. So there's the automatic bounce catcher that will prevent sending emails to email addresses that don't exist anymore. But also that's why it's really important, again, to use the opt-ins and to make sure you only send emails to the opt-ins and as segmented as possible. The more segmentation you use, or the more precise you determine who you're sending your email to, the more emails will be seen as wanted emails, and that's good, obviously. So with the query builder, it will also be easier to use the opt-ins, and it will hopefully also be easier to segment in a way that you can have those targeted emails. So let's now jump on the actual query builder. And again, thanks to Isla for allowing us to use theirs. I need to quickly log in here to see it. Here we go. So this is the query builder at the Isla Theater database. Let me see. So they have 130,000 visitors in their database at the moment. We haven't really started yet. So without any selection, we have 100% of all visitors, obviously, in our little query here. And there's two important settings. One is actually the one what recently released. We'll jump back to that later, the archive, but also the mailing query. The mailing query basically helps make this query available to the mailings. So if you don't tick it, it's just a mailing you want to use for, I don't know, export or getting some insights or whatever. If you want to use for mailings, you have to say this is a mailing query. As soon as you do that, it will also start warning about GDPR, because it does want you to use an opt-in for your mailings. You can choose to not use an opt-in. I mean, it doesn't force you to use an opt-in. It does push you to use an opt-in. Again, multiple reasons. You should only send emails with a basis according to the GDPR, obviously. But also, if you do not use this, the list and subscribe doesn't know what to subscribe your visitor to if they choose to rate it as spam. So that's an issue in itself. If you have issues or problems with that, don't worry, reach out and we can always advise on how to use that. So, but let's be good here and let's use an opt-in. They use 4 different ones. Let's just use the newsletter opt-in, and we can just recalculate at any time to see how many people are now in my query as it stands at this moment. So apparently there's still 28,000 people. More than 20% of all visitors have also opted in for the newsletter. I think that's pretty nice score, actually, but we do see relatively high scores as compared to non-cultural institutions. So that's one filter. And we can just combine filters as many as we like. And we try to build a query builder in a user-friendly way, so you don't have to think too much about, is this and or and or what is happening on a technical level. But again, do give feedback if you want, if you have an idea how we can improve this further. And also, again, these are the filters available today, but we do plan on adding more filters as we go. Just to use a combination, if you want to simulate the old way of sending mailings, that was basically sending an opt-in and maybe choosing a mailing list or multiple mailing lists. Let's just say plus, I don't know, so 432 people apparently have the opt-in newsletter and are also on the mailing list plus TM. And we can combine this, for instance, with who was active on the website in June. So after 1 June. See, still 142 people were active on the website, have a newsletter opt-in, and are considered plus TM. And we could also combine it with a visitor tag, maybe. These could be synced with the ticketing system, but we also allow a special visitor tags. For instance, is a new account, is something you could set up in Peppered. That doesn't come from your ticketing system, but that's a calculation we try to do and make an assessment of. You could combine that any way you like. So let's now, let's say Isla Filmvriend. Now we finally reach 0, so this is going to be sent to nobody. Let's remove it again. 142. You could also use more explicit ticketing type of filters, like purchased tickets for a production or maybe on an event level if you want to for specific dates, and just type and click. You can add multiple. I would be surprised if we have more than 0 here. Oh, wow, we still have 12. Impressive. Okay. Etc., etc. The special one I wanted to give attention to, Isla Theater doesn't use that one, unfortunately, but maybe next year, is the has time slot. So in the next again, for the next on sale, we hope that many of you will use the time slots for your on sales, because it will do a number of things. It will make the whole on sale a lot quieter, smoother, easier for your visitors. We get a lot of great feedback. Also with the Kleine Comedie, the first one using it. Luce is a fan, so if you want to reach out to her to ask, she likes that. The nice thing about the time slots, apart from all the other things we're going to handle in webinars about the on sale, but specifically for the query builder, interesting is we can also filter on who has a time slot. So who has requested to join the on sale but didn't buy a ticket, for instance, or did buy a ticket. So we have a lot of extra marketing information we could use to send a follow-up mailing. For instance, hey, you've requested a time slot for this year's on sale, but we see you didn't buy any ticket yet. Can we help you in some way? Reach out to us, or etc. So I think that's a lot of that brings a lot of value on marketing. So that's basically the combination of filters. Here's the newer one we talked about. So did someone, I want to select from my visitors, maybe let's come on, anyone opt in, who has a newsletter opt-in and who has bought tickets for a specific genre or tag. Let's say family in this example. There's still 1,653 people. And again, if they were active on the website recently, that's a nice sign also for segmentation. So as you can see, it's just a number of easy few clicks. And as soon as you save here, you can use this query in the mailing tool. If you want to set up your normal, so to say, newsletter mailing, it could look a little bit like this. For instance, you have a newsletter opt-in, obviously, but maybe you want to send out two mailings, one for friends and one for people that are not friends. So you can make in their case, Plus. You could make an oh, I broke something here. Well, using the wrong tag here. Don't know what happened there. But you could set, for instance, 2 or maybe even 3 fixed queries you're going to use in your mailing tool. And if you in your mailing tool, you create your mailing, send it to your first group, then create a copy, add some content or remove some content specifically for friends, you could easily send out that second mailing. And then because you don't have to worry about who you're sending it to, you don't have to do imports, exports, you don't have to worry about that. It's a relatively easy task, and it's just about the content you want to add or change in that aspect. So that's the quickly about the query builder. Is there any questions about that perhaps at the moment? If not, we'll just smoothly continue on. All right. Then the recent release. So this is actually a nice example of some feedback we got from the early adopters, the people that first started using Query Builder for mailings. They found that after creating a bunch of queries, it becomes a bit messy because the query needs to be there in the background still to allow the reports to work. So you cannot delete your queries as soon as you use them for mailings. That wasn't very helpful, so that's why we came up with the queries archive, and it's actually quite useful. What you can do, and we saw the switch before. If you select archive after use, and as soon as the mailing has been sent, it will automatically archive the queries. So it will be away from your overview of other queries, and it will keep it nice and clean, whilst the reporting will still work for those mailings that have been sent. This has been now fully released, so the beta was 3 June and the full release was 11 June, so that was last week. So everyone should have this now in their query builder. And that's basically it. So that was that's everything about sending mailings for query builders. Is there? There's a question I see from Millie Park Theater, how to add new mailing list in the query builder. So let's go back to my query builder link. I'm not sure what you mean exactly, Millie, but let me first try to answer it. So if you have your newsletter and you want to use the mailing list, you don't have to use mailing, but if you want to use the mailing list, you can just select multiple mailing lists, and this will work as if you are on any of these mailing lists, or maybe all of them or 2 of them, it will add you to the specific query. So you can always just jump in back in the query and add another mailing list if you like. Or this old mailing modules will also still work. So you still have the mailing lists modules. Where are they? Mailings. You could still add mailings. You can still import mailings. So that works exactly the same as before. The only difference is that instead of using them in sending, you can now use them in your query builder. But you don't have to use the mailing list. You could also decide to send something to your full newsletter opt-in. It's really the split between the opt-ins. So the opt-ins is about what is my basis, my legal basis of sending this email. Is it because I have a newsletter opt-in? Is it because they bought a ticket and I automatically gave a service mailing opt-in, or is it something else? And then the second part is about the segmentation, and you can use the mailing list for it. Maybe if you use, for instance, mailing list for preferences, you could do that. But you don't have to. You can also use different selectors like the visitor tags, for example, or if somebody has bought tickets or not. Millie, I hope that answers your question, or if not, I'm afraid you need to elaborate a little bit more. Great. Yes, thank you, says Millie. Any other questions? Or was this all very clear? All right. Well, I hope that everybody then now feels safe with experimenting. I would say if you haven't played with the query builder yet, jump in, play with it. You cannot really break anything. It will work on your data. As you've seen here, this was live. It works really fast. Even though the database can be quite big and especially combination can be quick, it will still be really fast. I'm not going to do that in the webinar because there's some personal information, but if you have saved the query, you can also jump in to just use an existing query, for example, newsleaf abonnees, use it, and you could click to export to CSV or view the results on screen and just compare what you expect and what you see. And if you feel comfortable, again, just jump into the control panel. I'm always a bit lazy, so I don't go look for the correct modules, look for query, mailings, here we go, and set it to yes here. And that's basically all you need to do. And if you do that, you can use the mailings in the new query builder, and you will see the nice new reporting. And again, I guess that's from our side the most important thing. Please do give us feedback if you feel there's something missing or something is not working in the most user-friendly way, or there's next steps, because now that almost everybody will be on this new version, it will also be easier for us to put all attention we have on this new version and add cool filters. That's what I'm most excited about. Oh, sorry, there's another questions coming in. Anna Theater Kruispunt. When you switch the slider under the control panel, there's no way back, indeed. But can you still see the mailings you've created? Yeah, so you won't lose your old mailings. You can see the old mailings. It's just that you cannot switch back to the old style. So you won't lose anything. Don't worry about that. You still be visible. You can still see statistics also for old mailings, but there's some changes in the database that just don't allow going back, only going forward for this one. So you could safely change that setting yourself, or if you feel more comfortable with the help of a customer success manager, then just reach out on the service portal and we can assist or see if you want to need more info on something. Toneelgroep Maastricht ask, can you also see who has no opt-in? That's a good question, actually. I don't know if you can see that in the query builder. I don't think you can, actually. Do you have an example of why you would need to see who has not an opt-in? Or you need to unmute if you want to. Oh, and no working microphone. I guess we can bring this to the service portal and have a one-on-one later. The query builder does not have an opt-in, so that's not possible today. You can see how many people don't have an opt-in. You could, in theory, make comparisons yourself, but that's I guess relatively complicated to do. Then a question from the Adelberg. Can you archive queries. Kan je de reeds aangemaakte queries nog archiveren als je dit niet hebt aangeduid voor het aan? Yeah, can you still archive queries even though you didn't select archive when you were creating it? Definitely, you can always manually archive any query. Let me show you that quickly also. We have time anyway. Let's see. So this is the overview of queries that Isla Theater currently have, and there's an archive button here now. You can easily archive it. You can also check out your archive, what old stuff is in there, and you can unarchive it also. So it's also a very safe button to use, and you don't have to set that immediately. It's more a button that will do something when it is actually used for sending. Right, nice that we got some cool questions and stuff that wasn't in the webinar yet, so that's very helpful. If that's all of the questions, then I guess I'm going to thank everybody for attending this webinar. And again, if you have further questions or you require some assistance with enabling or changing or understanding the query builder, then reach out to the customer success managers, and we're happy to help. And also thanks for all the non-English speakers here to listen to all of this in English, especially the technical parts can be a little bit difficult. So also there, if you feel you want to have a bit more in-depth explanation in Dutch, we are available. So just reach out. Thanks, everybody.